Welcome to my election night broadcast. We made it this far. Thanks for tuning in. I used as my title, Join Me, I'm Cheerful. I'm feeling cheerful. There's some good news, some swings to Biden in rural areas in Indiana, and it confirms what the polls were suggesting. I'll cross over to that, but first, some breaking news that sources close to U.S. Attorney John Durham says he has found no wrongdoing by Obama or Biden. So I guess he's leaking that now so that it kind of gets hushed up that Barr was trying to organize prosecution of Trump's enemies in the first place. Trump will be sad about it, but Trump's got a few things probably to be sad about today. Virginia, Democrat Mark Warner has won re-election to the U.S. Senate from Virginia. So that was an AP call at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Nice work. Now, here's a tweet that I think you'll enjoy, and it's going to be historic in relation to the election. So a conservative you might be familiar with by the name of Eric Erickson. He was a never-Trumper in 2016 for a while and then became a very fervent pro-Trump person. He tweeted earlier on in the day, getting some GOP confidence about Pennsylvania right now. And then his updated tweet is GOP confidence dissipated. And I think that's going to be the story of the night. So if it's making you uneasy to watch Republicans go, oh, yep, this is in the bag for Trump. I'm sure of it. Trump's going to do fabulously. They are not attached to reality, which perpetuates a pattern we've noticed in the Republican camp for a while. And from exit votes, voters who are Republican are saying that they think COVID is going well. They think the pandemic management response is going well, which is one of the real reasons why the COVID management response is going very poorly. Not only does Trump not have a national testing strategy or a national response or a national plan, leaving a patchy, erratic, uncoordinated, and inadequate response, but he's also actively misleading the public and particularly misleading the voters who still trust him or listen to him. And he's telling them that there's no problem with COVID, which really untethers them from reality because COVID is spiking across America. Various states have had to put up field hospitals to deal with the overflow of patients. Hello. So I've missed some people. Let's say hello. Alan's here. Hello, Alan. Georgia, you can probably have Georgia if you're a liberal. Hi, Chris. Nice to see you. Hi, Trump Up Bigley. You just voted Biden in a deep red state and you're so thrilled. I know people are reporting a very strong sense of satisfaction today. Paul's here as well. Nice. And Tinker's excellent. He will never admit he messed up with COVID actions, and that in and of itself is deadly. That's a deadly approach to have, to say, I'm never going to admit that COVID's a problem because I never want to be held accountable by my supporters for the fact that I have responded inadequately, that I have responded negligently, that I have responded with malevolent levels of indifference and sabotage. Yes, it is a sigh of relief. It's going to be a good night, folks. I promise. I promise you. It's looking really good. I'll show you. So that was what I was referencing. Nearly half of Americans think efforts to contain the coronavirus are going well in the middle of an exponential out of control explosion of coronavirus. So the amount of misinformation that has led to this point is astounding. And it's to be hoped that once it's very much on the table that everybody's voted, that at least there will be less incentivized deceit of the American public, because Republicans have been incentivized to lie, to Americans about how the coronavirus is going, because they wanted to make it into an election strength for Trump. That Trump was running against the negative reality put forward by the Democrats. Negative because it's just sad that coronavirus is exponentially exploding across the United States and hasn't been brought under control and is accruing more victims daily. That's negative, and Donald Trump wanted to run on a positive, as a cheerleader, as someone who hadn't done anything wrong and who had already made America great. So he had to run on a campaign of denialism that COVID's a problem, that the economy is floundering, that a second stimulus package should have been passed months ago, etc. I wonder if there's any way to substantially pressure Senate Republicans like Mitch McConnell, once this election has happened, to bring back the Senate and to pass a goddamn second stimulus bill and save the American economy, rather than purposefully run it into the dirt to just create more problems for Biden to deal with and a head start in Republican undermining of their fellow party in a two-party system. So people have described the election as being on steroids, but going well overall so far. There's some issues that come up in a normal election, but there's high turnout, so there's some issues. There's been some, obviously, disinformation, robocalls to people in... Which state was getting the robocalls telling them not to turn out to vote because of long lines? I've forgotten which state that was. That's all right. So two sporting people, Denver Broncos general manager and team president Joe Ellis, test positive for COVID. So COVID's definitely not going well, and white, wealthy people are definitely not immune. In Ireland, we are all in on Biden. Yes, go Ireland. I'm so proud of Ireland for all of the women who flew back to Ireland to help vote in a referendum on abortion and make abortion relatively more legal in Ireland, particularly after a very direction-changing event, an era-making event of the death of a 31-year-old dentist by the name of Dr. Savita Halapanova, who had a pregnancy. Her unborn child at 19 weeks was infected, was dying. Doctors told her that there was very little chance that her baby was going to survive. In fact, no chance, but they could still detect a fetal heartbeat. So even though she said, I'm feeling really unwell, if this baby's not going to survive, can you please take it out of me so I don't also become infected? Can you please expedite this process of my baby dying so I don't have to stay here getting sicker and sicker in hospital carrying my dying unborn child? And they wouldn't help her because the midwife told her it's a Catholic hospital, and this is Ireland. Like, you're not going to get an abortion because there's still a detectable fetal heartbeat. So even though the diagnosis was, that baby is not going to live, her right to get adequate medical treatment was compromised by that desire to place an unborn child's rights on a pedestal. To give it even equivalency to a woman is putting a woman in danger, because we carry babies. We are the host. And if you won't treat us because you're scared of jeopardizing any tiny potential that an unborn baby might live, and you're willing to expose a woman to greater risk of death as a consequence, then you're putting women in peril. And that's what tends to happen in countries where abortion is illegal. You have much higher rates of maternal death. And that could be one reason as well why the US defies international trends. Women, with the advent of modern medicine, mostly have lowering rates of maternal deaths in countries all around the world, industrialized modern countries, except for America, which defies that trend because it has an increasing maternal mortality rate. And that's likely to be, in part at least, because various US states have made it more difficult for women to access reproductive choice. Reagan didn't do anything about AIDS until heterosexual white folks got it. True. Looks like Biden is going to take Florida. Isn't that fabulous? There's been such high turnout in the Democratic strongholds of the state because everybody got on board. So Elway was a big Trump supporter. Let's have a look. Oh, the Denver Broncos manager. Okay, so yes, not altogether surprising then that a Trump supporter might have taken risks, particularly if they don't believe that COVID is real. Now, this is a British person who helped orchestrate massive bad outcomes, a nightmare, disaster that's unfolding for the United Kingdom. They're suffering heavily from COVID, and in the meantime, their economy is going to go into the toilet as well because of Brexit. This plan for Britain to just rip up its membership of the European Union, and consequently all of the arrangements, all of the trade deals, all of the intelligence sharing, and the academic pathways for sharing information as well. Exactly. In Ireland, they honoured Civita. They repealed the Eighth Amendment. Thousands flew home. Imagine living in another country, but paying for a plane ticket to fly back to your home country to participate in person in a referendum that would allow women greater protections under the law, to exercise reproductive choice, to be able to say, nope, I can't, this is not a tenable pregnancy. I had something that inadvertently happened to me. Conception is a product of men and women having an activity, but biology mandates that women are stuck with the physical consequences of it initially. But to say, nope, out of your hands, women, you have to suffer like men because men can't do anything. After conception, they can't make a choice. And there's that resentment there. So I think some people exercise that jealous backlash and want to control people because, controlling women has been a recreational pastime historically for a lot of people. Yes, I'm glad I'm here too. Florida will be awesome, won't it? It means Biden is likely to easily win 270, and it could be a blowout. Do I want to get your hopes up too much? It could be a pretty big blowout in favor of Biden. So let's, Nigel Farage is saying that he bet about £10,000 on a Trump victory. So I just want to draw your attention to that because I think he's just lost £10,000. Amongst both Biden and Trump voters, a majority know someone who's been infected with coronavirus, according to this reporting from Navigator Research. However, while 9 in 10 Biden voters say the pandemic is worse now than it has been in recent months, just a third of Trump voters say the same. So that third of Trump voters, here we go, the 33%, over in the right-hand corner say the pandemic is worse now than it has been in recent months. That's where you derive some of your crossover support, Republicans who will not only fail to vote for Trump, but who will actively vote for Biden, who acknowledges the pandemic and doesn't go out trying to have super spreader events or actively sabotage mask wearing. There are some Republicans who believe in science, and there are some decent Republicans. But more to the point, Democratic turnout is the key to the success in the Electoral College system. Fauci will be counting the 79 days. Well, he's probably going to be fired after the election if Trump has the energy. He was making that promise to his supporters at a recent rally. So overall, 65% of American voters know someone who's been infected with coronavirus, 69% of Biden voters and 60% of Trump voters. It did hit blue states more strongly initially, but it's catching up in red states. Guess what? 18,000 new voters registered today in Michigan. So that's pretty fabulous. Remember, all increased participation in democracy is favorable for Democrats. When more people vote, more Democrats win office. And that's something, that's a reality that hopefully will really stay with people, because they need to not just vote for Biden and Democratic candidates today down the ballot. They need to come back in midterm elections and support Biden and not get complacent, as happened after Obama was elected. Let that energy dissipate and go, whew, we're spent. We managed to get Obama elected as president. Clearly, America's problems are solved, and we are now a post-racist society. Well, Trump helped indicate to people that America is not post-racist, and that you have to watch out for a backlash sometimes if you've had a notable success. Journalism students have done an amazing thing. So journalism students at Louisville's Manual High School revealed in a bombshell report that this particular police department had at one time used a training slideshow that quoted Adolf Hitler multiple times and advocated for troopers to use ruthless violence. And that's in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. And that's Breonna Taylor's Louisville. That's Louisville's. Oh my gosh, that's extra, just taken on extra significance. Well, he's resigning, and the resignation is effective Wednesday. He's resigning. He was exposed by journalist students at a local high school for having used a training slideshow that quoted Hitler multiple times and told troopers to use, what was it, absolute force? Ruthless violence. Oh my gosh. So thank you, young people. Hooray. Now, this is a little bit of a poignant video. It features footage of a girl who was 14 in 2016 and her very astute and emotional reaction to Donald Trump's victory then, and what she has just been able to do now because she's 18. So are you okay? Do you have tissues if you need them?
Back in 2016, when I was 14, I was absolutely traumatized by Donald Trump winning the election.
Tell me why you're so upset.
I have a feeling Donald Trump is going to make America dangerous.
Why would it be dangerous?
Because of what he is going to do to the America I once loved. If Donald Trump wins, I could just imagine just another war happening. And I hope those who did vote for Donald Trump will know that they made a big mistake. But it's a good thing. It's up to my generation to fix it, so that we make sure this horse shit never happens. So time's up, motherfucker.
So that was such a poignant retrospective to look at. She was afraid that Donald Trump would start a war. So was I. And I'm so grateful to the Nobel Prize team that gave Obama a Nobel Peace Prize during his tenure, because I think that's one thing that gave Donald Trump an aspiration to get a reputation for peace. So even though he had this urge to posture as a strong man, he started trade wars, which hurt people financially, but didn't cause as much death and destruction as would have happened if he'd launched a nuclear attack on someone. Instead of a war, he's allowed hundreds of thousands of Americans to die by purposefully and willfully neglecting to have a pandemic response, by choosing to lie to the public and choosing to ignore the reality of a contagious disease that by nature is very contagious and very deadly only to a subset, and not one-to-one, you get it, you die, death rate. But if you're over a certain age, 10% of the people who contract it may die. So we on the left tend to emotionally over-exaggerate the risks of death, but that's because big picture, our thought processes are falling in line with the idea of take precautions, protect other people, don't be selfish, even if you yourself think you have low risk of dying from this disease. don't be a vector of transmission, don't put others in danger, take care, contain the virus. Many Americans on the left have intuitively understood that the way out of a pandemic is to contain it. And countries that have pursued an elimination strategy, like New Zealand, have shown the ability to economically recover, to get it down to no cases, and then stay cautious, stay alert, but resume normal economic activity and resume normal life. And they can do that because they put in the effort and their leaders put in that consistency of messaging. People don't feel motivated to act if they look around them and see, or they don't feel as motivated to act if they can look around and see people close to them not taking adequate precautions. Maddo's working on numbers coming in from Florida. Yeah, I don't think watching television is any fun. I tried to watch a minute of CNN. It just didn't feel good. The speculation people do to sort of cover their butts and say, yes, what do we think is going to happen this evening? Well, it'll be historic. Historic things will happen. That kind of pompous, could go either way, could be a Trump victory or a Biden victory. You don't need that. There are positive signs that Joe Biden has led us a fantastic coalition building exercise for his campaign, that we've, like an Avengers, summoning Avengers meme, that it's been, come on independents, come on down disaffected Trump voters, come on in working class people of color and working class white people. This is a big tent, you're in it, your interests are represented here. And look around you, your interests are not being served. Trump might be meeting your emotional needs by validating that your need to hear positive information. But it's not positive information from Trump, is it? It's positive disinformation. And a country is safer and stronger when its leaders deal in reality and speak truth to the public, and also do the work to organize for safety, do the work to get the protective gear that's needed, do the work to have real travel bans and not travel bans that are full of holes like a slice of Swiss cheese or a sponge that say, sure, travel ban from China, but we're just going to bring everybody in from Wuhan and return them to their homes. We're going to just repatriate 40,000 Americans and still keep pretending to the public that we had a travel ban from China and that we were so brave and that Donald Trump was such an innovator in doing so. He had to be begged to do it in the first place by his advisors. And then he was like, oh, yeah, travel ban from China. That's great. I guess I've got my Chinese President Xi's signature on a trade deal, so I can brandish that if anybody points out that I accidentally kicked off a manufacturing recession with my dumbass tariff war. And I'm actually terrible for the economy and all of the working class manufacturing workers that I promised the world to are currently looking at a depressed job market in 2019. That's good. I've helped break Alan's reliance on MSNBC or CNN. Everybody was devastated. Yes. Well, it's been a costly lesson in the price for allowing people to get away with denying American history and the corrosive effect of the electoral college system. So it's amazing because so much of the world has been hurt as well through the very visible and prominent example that Trump has set in denying COVID, in COVID denialism, which has spawned and amplified internet conspiracies that also engage in COVID denialism. There's Trump supporters all over the world because he's such a larger than life personality and very like a champion for contrarian idiots, basically. And that's very enticing. And it's to be hoped that today is such a solid repudiation of Trump that some of those people get back in their box, they really enjoyed the overturning of expectations with 2016. There's a lot of people who were delighted by the liberal tears, the sadness of people with the sense to be distressed and concerned and worried about what a Trump presidency would involve. We know now what a Trump presidency involves. In the advent of a crisis, it involves mass death, and Trump won't help. It involves economic devastation, and Trump won't be able to force the Republican Party to help. Hi, Jane. Nice to see you too. Wearing a mask under your nose is not an effective way to wear a mask. This is true. So that account, if you enjoyed that video, that account was posted by a Twitter account called So-Called Mom. So-Called Mom, mother of 7 rad resistor kids. Yep. Her children are all, I've seen a video of them before. They are very engaged, astute children. She is an awesome mother. 7 kids. My hat goes off to her. I've seen her kids before comment on Donald Trump, and they are amazing children. So I recommend following that account. In fact, I'll scroll up so you can see it. She's got nearly 4,000 followers at Real So-Called Mom. I still can't say mom. Mom. In Australia, we say mum, M-U-M. So saying M-O-N is something that is such a big adjustment. So yes, this is from an hour ago, this critical Florida county that we've been keeping our eyes on. Democrats have hit 80% turnout. This is just fabulous. And independents favor Biden as well. So when independents are turning out too, this is excellent. Sullivan agreed to give the US Postal Service more time to sweep for possible missing ballots in mail processing centers in Pennsylvania, Colorado, Michigan, etc., because USPS, as led by Trump appointee Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, said it couldn't complete sweeps by 3 p.m. as ordered. Let's have a look. The court denies plaintiff's request for an immediate status conference. Defendants shall be prepared to discuss the apparent lack of compliance with the court's order at the status conference scheduled for 12 p.m. on November the 4th, signed by Judge Emmett G. Sullivan. Now, if you're familiar with that name, that's the judge who's been thwarting William Barr's efforts to completely overturn Michael Flynn's guilty pleas and accountability within America's judicial system. In California, in Spalding Country, which is apparently a Trump stronghold area, they had problems. None of their voting machines were working, but their polling locations are going to remain open till 9 p.m., which is great. Even in a Trump area, Democrats are happy for democracy to happen, for people to be allowed to vote. Count all the votes and vote. Such a Democrat request. And Republicans pretend that Democrats get too many people to vote, but the idea of voter fraud, widespread voter fraud, has been investigated over and over again, and it's just fabricated BS. There is no widespread voter fraud. The systems work, and people don't mostly try to do that. There's been a few isolated incidents. I remember from 2016 of a woman trying to vote twice for Trump. I think she just got community service. Whereas Crystal Mason, a Black woman in Texas, who was not aware that being on probation in her state in Texas disqualified her from voting. And she did not read the fine print in the form that she was given. She was just trying to do her civic duty, and she received a 5-year jail sentence. That's going to be something I'll still keep broadcasting about in the days to come. Release Crystal Mason. It's ridiculous. And maybe now, once this election is settled, and Democrats have been redeemed, and America has been redeemed to a degree in the eyes of the world, like we'll know now that there is that possibility in America as elsewhere that irrational racist conspiratorial people can, if given access to power, if dealt with apathetically by the rest of us, will get hold of power and just ruin things for the rest of us because of their moral cowardness in dealing with reality and facing up to the science of climate change and facing up to the science of pandemics. They are always interested in plumping for fake ideas that make them feel special to buy into. Oh, it's Bill Gates running a conspiracy to vaccinate you and inject you with a microchip. It's people, it's Hollywood conspiracies, blah, blah, blah. Whatever nonsense they can share on Facebook, you bad thing, they will. And it's up to the rest of us to stay vigilant. It's like the lesson that Jewish people learned after World War II, that people who look decent, educated people, can still get caught up in the gratification of propaganda, the gratification of being told you're special, you're a master race, other people should bow to you, and preserve a hierarchy of race and superiority. And Yes, so that was Judge Emmett Sullivan, who ordered the sweep of some post offices. The post office said no, they would not comply with that. The judge gave them an additional deadline until 3 p.m. of tomorrow, and has a conference call with them at 12 o'clock. Sorry, a conference meeting of some description with them at 12 o'clock. You're still confused about how Trump followers can't see COVID is still raging. A lot of Trump voters can't see that COVID is raging. It's the power of propaganda to compel people to disbelieve the evidence of their eyes and ears. They don't believe media. It's fake news. They only believe Fox, and Fox is not reporting on the reality of the COVID pandemic. Fox is saying, oh, I don't think they're saying hydroxychloroquine anymore, but they're still suggesting it's a media beat up that's exaggerated, and that there will be less COVID around miraculously after the election is over, because it was just something that Democrats were doing and the media was promoting in order to increase votes for Democrats. And that's what will happen when, I guess, Democrats win. They'll say, dang it, their COVID hoax worked. And it is to be hoped that more Republicans at least go, well, maybe then it wasn't a hoax. Maybe we've just been trounced in an election. Maybe we should consider the possibility that some of our information has been wrong. And hopefully people can focus, instead of focusing on getting people to vote for Joe Biden, we can instead focus on shaming people into wearing masks and doing what is necessary to bring this raging pandemic under control in the United States, because it is shocking, it is irresponsible that so many neglect to wear masks or pretend that it's not happening. But Trump's been able to get away with that. He's had extra attention paid to him because of the election. This campaign has come at such a terrible time for America's public health generally, because Trump has been very motivated to lie to the American people and to pretend that COVID's not exponentially growing. And exponentially is a word that's difficult for people to get their head around, but very hard to contain something that's growing exponentially. It means every day that passes, it gets harder and harder to be able to bring this under control again without lockdowns. So Trump and Mitch McConnell and all of the complicit Republicans have created this hole for Joe Biden to try and claw America out of. But Joe Biden's definitely the person to do it. So is Kamala Harris. They are positive and in intention and clear-sighted about the negative nature of part of reality right now, which is, yes, infections are rising. Field hospitals are springing up to deal with the mass influx of hospitalized COVID patients. Yes, Americans in red states are experiencing a surge of COVID in rural areas, which is probably contributing to the relatively underperformance of Trump supporters. They needed to really massively turn out their voters and more, because they hadn't built a coalition either, in the same way that Democrats have been bringing more people on board. So this is a nice update that per CNN, the election party at the barricaded White House tonight has been scaled down from 400 people to 250 people. Like, that's nice in terms of super spreader event terms. Have less people at the White House. It tends to be a focal point of COVID transmission. So if the super spreader events reduced from 400 to 250, that's still something. And potentially also an indicator that, yeah, they don't really need to have crowds of people on camera, because the likelihood of needing to have a big celebration for Trump is small. All right. Has anybody, while I've been talking, anybody seen any up-to-date news that you want to share? US is on track for the highest rate of voter turnout since 1908. So historic, once-in-a-century level turnout. Good. Americans responding to this critical moment in American history and in world history. This is a critical moment for the world and we'll be proud of America. Look, people get caught up in fascism. People get caught up in the contagious excitement of expanding cruelty and consolidating power. So for Americans to have done so much work to organize, to keep telling people the truth, for the media to keep reporting as accurately as possible, even when an intimidation campaign was being waged against them by the Trump administration. You've seen how rude and dismissive all of the press secretaries have been, because it was their job to undermine the public's trust in the media and continually say, oh, you know how you are with facts, you're fake news. No, you've got this detail wrong, so clearly you're just trying to make President Trump look bad. Yes. This is a nice detail leaked that I'll share with you. Peter Alexander, who you might be familiar with, he's the man who at an earlier press conference tried to throw Trump a softball question by saying, what do you have to say to Americans who are afraid? And he was expecting that to that softball question, Trump would say, oh, be strong, Americans, or we can do this together, or something easy for a so-called cheerleader for America to do. And Trump instead said, that's a very nasty question. I should have got more water. So this message from Peter Alexander. Early concern inside Trump world about election day turnout activities in Pennsylvania. A person with direct knowledge of the campaign's operations tells me the team in Pennsylvania was not as prepared as it should be in a state that could decide the presidency. So, yep, when you start to get early leaks of, oh yeah, maybe we didn't do enough in Pennsylvania, they're already starting to go, oh yep, let's start to make the excuses and the apologies and the whoopsies, we lost the election in a landslide type of admissions. Yes, I didn't say that before. Yes, not only did Senator Mark Warner get called as the victor in his Senate re-election bid, but Virginia has been called for Biden, which is good. Oh, that's a good phrase. Yes, biogenocidal war on Americans. Trump has been waging that as part of his re-election campaign to deceive people about the pandemic and so undermine the levels of anxiety that they need to have in order to modify their behavior and stop going to church, to attend church online instead of in person. It takes concerted efforts to modify your behavior. When the Spanish flu was a big epidemic in 1918, federal leaders, different national leaders around the globe, lied to people about it and concealed its prevalence because they wanted to keep people's hopes up because of the war. They wanted to keep people donating to a war effort and focused on victory. I don't know. I haven't looked into it historically, but I've heard that there was some political motivating factors in relation to the war effort to not let people know. But then we've seen the pictures as well of people at that time who began to wear masks and also wore signs to shame people who weren't wearing masks. They wore signs saying non-mask wearing will be prosecuted. The few Trump supporters you still correspond with think it's the flu. Yeah, think it's equivalent to the flu. You reported one of the sellers at the farmers market co-op because they don't wear masks. It's easy to lie to people about a negative situation because people would prefer to believe that everything's going well. So that's the problem with climate change and motivated lies as well. People who prefer to preserve their profit margins for selling coal or oil have been prepared to heavily invest in large campaigns of deceiving the public. And the public is easy to deceive because it's easier to say, oh, okay, things are fine, we don't need to worry. It's just a bit of hysterical scientists who are clout chasing by trying to tell us that if we don't collectively get behind the need to take action, that things are going to work out badly for humanity. Yeah, that sounds awkward. It's much preferable to believe that's not the case. We have something called normalcy bias. We'd prefer to believe that the way we're living now is fine. And French aristocrats had that as well. Marie Antoinette let them eat cake. They were very enmeshed in believing that their lifestyles were fine, even as they taxed the population and used those taxes to build huge palaces for themselves while peasants were starving and there were famines. One poll greeter you took to said she was seeing more young Black voters this time. Yes, Gen Z is turning out, and to see such a high level of Black voter turnout as well. The Black community is one community that has very little COVID denialism because Black Americans have been hit additionally hard by the COVID pandemic. I don't know all the reasons. It's going to be difficult at this stage to say reasons why that's so, but reduced access to medical care, overrepresentation in the workforce of essential workers, and I don't know if vitamin D has anything to do with it as well. But yes, we know systemic racism and the history of economic deprivation plays a role in lack of access to adequate medical care, as well as there just being discrimination in medical settings. So I don't know if anybody remembers, but there was this one very sad day when I reported on a CNN story that said Black babies under the care of white doctors are 3 times more likely to die than Black babies with complex medical conditions are likely to die under the care of Black doctors, which is just extraordinary evidence of subconscious racism. Because there's nothing to say that Black doctors are magically better doctors than white doctors. They're just less likely to discriminate against Black babies. And white doctors are evidently statistically more likely to give up on treating complex early problems in the lives of Black children. It is sad. I was very sad when I read that because I know that doctors have committed themselves to the public good, but we grow up in environments and we can be immersed in certain messages where we disparage others or are more likely to be disparaging of others. And that bias can manifest itself in unconscious ways, and to think that medical professionals are still doing that and that Black people would know it. Black people know from their lived experience and the number of people they personally know, women who've died in childbirth, women who have had hemorrhages that have gone unnoticed. Serena Williams nearly died when she was giving birth. She had to advocate for herself when she was in a precarious medical condition and say, no, I've got this history of of blood clots. I need to be monitored about this. And they were dismissing her, and she could have died from hemorrhaging, but at least she's Serena Williams, and she was able to powerfully advocate for herself, and she was able to get the medical care she needs. But it highlights that there is likely to be a disproportionate loss of life amongst the subset of the population that is Black mothers in the United States because of people being unduly dismissive of their medical needs. And one thing that's a factor that people don't know much about is that hair straightening products, chemical hair straighteners, are implicated in the growth of uterine fibroids, i.e. benign growths in your abdominal cavity that can cause bleeding if you've just got things like organs, but they're not organs, they're just growths that are serviced by blood vessels. And then if you have a process like pregnancy where there's expansion of an area and some growth rips or tears and you have bleeding, that puts your life in jeopardy during the processes of pregnancy and labor. So yes, through lesions on the scalp caused by treating and straightening hair, which people are sometimes impelled to do because of internalized racist standards that say your hair should look like a white person's hair, your hair should be smooth and straight. So women who feel the need or who feel pressure to do that for professional advancement purposes or just for aesthetic purposes to look beautiful, increasing their risk of dying during pregnancy. It's not a huge increase in risk, but that's not a continuum that you want to advance along. So if there was more widespread awareness about that, we could reduce the mortality rate to a degree for Black women if people became aware of, or if there were more studies conducted to bring this to people's attention as well, that there is an association, a reasonably robust association between use of chemical hair straighteners and increased incidence of uterine fibroids that is associated with an increased risk of death and loss of and blood loss during pregnancy and labor. Oh, we're getting updates. Biden projected winner in Massachusetts. Excellent. Yes, that stuff is nasty. It has lye and phosphates in it. Overall life expectancy has declined in the US. I'm sure institutional racism plays a big part. Well, I'm sure it does too, but racism and covert racism in communities is associated with higher incidence of heart disease and heart problems. If you live with high levels of racism, it causes you stress and your heart is impacted. But people who are racist as well are less likely to be trusting, to have conspiratorial worldviews, and that's associated with heart problems as well. Now, I'm going to show you something which I've mentioned before, but because it's so counterintuitive, it's always worth bringing it up again because it's harder to process information that doesn't neatly fit into narratives that we already accept. If things don't have an easy hook to the way we understand the world. Now, this shows, I'll just wait for it to load. Biden projected winner in New Jersey, DC and Delaware too. Awesome, awesome. Seneca type 1 and diabetic, more Seneca are being born with. Is Seneca the name of the tribe? Okay, so this is racial gaps in hope, ill-being, and deaths of despair. Minorities, let me read it to you because this is critical. I won't read you the whole article, but minorities in America are gradually, well, this was published in February 27th, so COVID has exacerbated inequality. So what I'm reading, this sentence I'm reading to you, is overturned by the outcomes of the pandemic that have shuttered more Black businesses and left more Black women particularly out of work. But so minorities in America are gradually closing the racial gaps in areas of mortality and education while fostering a unique resilience and sense of community. Research shows a large gap in optimism amongst poor communities, particularly between Black and white groups. One of her studies found that Black people were 3 times as likely to be higher up on an optimism scale than poor white people. Poor Black people are also half as likely to report stress the previous day than poor white people. So poor Black people are like, nope, not all Black people. For generalization purposes, poor white people are feeling sorrier for themselves. Like, where is my legacy of this prosperity that belongs to white people? Why don't I have it? It's my birthright. And there's higher rates of premature death in white communities. So the US is the only wealthy country in the world with a rising mortality rate. This is partly due to deaths of despair, or the huge increase in premature deaths amongst less than college educated, middle-aged white people. Okay, this is really a key sentence for us to think about. There is that sense of grievance, that white grievance culture we sometimes talk about. It's true, but it's self-induced. There is something wrong with the mental outlook of white, non-college educated, middle-aged white people, or at least there was until recently, and I'm going to presume that it's still there. It's still a problem. They need leadership from the Republican Party that helps them not just expect to have hereditary wealth in America by virtue of being white, and not to resent the success of Black people. So in history, all of the riots against Black American success, the Tulsa riots where white people burned down businesses and hospitals and Black schools in the Black community, in the area that was called the Wall Street of Tulsa. I've forgotten the name of it. But anyway, if you Google Tulsa riots, they were race riots conducted by white people against Black people. And it shows that white people have, across time during Reconstruction, in a way that helped bring an end to Reconstruction and an end to Black people having the vote at that time after slavery was abolished, so that America then had to fight again for civil rights in the 1960s because Reconstruction was derailed. That expectation gap has been really critical to ill health in communities where there are lots of white working class people, that they haven't achieved what they think they should achieve. And it's not that they're poor, it's that they're looking around them and resenting the success of minority groups and seeking scapegoats in the form of undocumented migrants or Black Americans. Yeah, Mitch McConnell won re-election. That's not unexpected, but what we are wanting is for Mitch McConnell to be disempowered. Mitch McConnell is not healthy. He will probably not live longer than a year, really. But the key thing is to take the power of the Senate Majority Leader away from him. So as we have more votes counted and hopefully get Democratic control of the Senate, that's going to be the big relief, to take that power away from Mitch McConnell. Seneca is the indigenous nation you were born in. That's what I was guessing. Thank you. The price of insulin has skyrocketed because the pendulum swung to favor corporations. Trump is a Republican and they act to deregulate industry. And the pharmaceutical industry, when you deregulate it, will charge people whatever it can get away with. And that turns out to be quite a lot, because they don't mind losing some of their customer base to death, provided the profit margins have increased that substantially. Which is why you need guardrails for capitalism and guardrails to protect consumer interests. And you can do that without having progressed all the way along the continuum to communism. Similar to the EpiPen price gouging by the pharmaceutical company as well. So glucose test strips, it costs you $122 a month to test. Extraordinary. No trolls. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Mitch McConnell has done an incredible amount of damage to the American people, yes. All right. Shall we check Twitter for any more election updates? Let's have a look. Biden wins Maine. We need to see how the 2nd district has gone. Ohio is apparently looking promising. It's a swing state. It will likely be a close race. So early returns suggest that Biden has a reasonably good chance in Ohio. Where's Tarrant country, folks? Thank you. Nice to see you, ABS fan. Have a great day. Great evening. Trump's claim of reduced drug price was based on drugs that went off patent and went generic. What's up? Where? Oh, that's not Perry Pilot. I thought it was someone I knew. Actually, maybe it is. Is that you with a different screen name, Perry Pilot? So does anybody know where Tarrant country is? In any case, in 2016, it went for Trump 52, Clinton 43, and now it's currently standing at Biden 49 and Trump 49. So that's a swing away from the Republican candidate by 3 points and a decrease in the Republican vote by 3 points and an increase in the Democratic vote by 6 points. So you add 6 to 3, so you get a 9-point swing. Awesome. Maricopa County in Florida, decrease in Republican votes, but a lift in Democratic votes in the last hour. So that's good. So still a potential advantage to Republicans, but a lift in Dem voters. So that's good. Yeah, Amy McGrath did not have a strong chance, but it's a very red state. It's a very red state. But still, that's a good showing, Amy McGrath, for a Democrat in a state. The Cuban voters in Miami think everyone is a communist. I'm not surprised. If you flee communism and you have lived experience of the harms that communism causes, then yes, I can see how you might have a degree of hypervigilance. Oh, Pumpkin, who are you? I'm very good at handling the truth. I'm adept. As part of the necessary intellectual humility that you have to try and bring a reasonable amount of fact-based analysis to the table, you have to be prepared to contend with some challenging assertions. But I don't indulge trolls. So yes, I call them Dwight and I pity them. And I pity your dependence on accusing me of intolerance, because I'm sure it's fun for you to lash out all the time, but the degree of fact basis for your assertions is low. Mitch McConnell has done nothing for his state. He's kept them at the bottom of the state tables for various measures. But republicanism is associated with pseudo-populism. Harm people, but give them an enemy to blame. And cater to their long-standing chip on the shoulder about losing the Civil War. Seriously, Mitch McConnell is a candidate for people who want to relitigate the Civil War and win it. That's why he appears in front of a famous picture of Mitch McConnell appearing in front of a large Confederate flag. He is the candidate for people with covert or overt attachment to principles of the Confederate Army to defeat the North and their commitment, at least partial commitment, to promoting equality for formerly enslaved people. Yep, but I think most of the polls have closed now, dear person giving a public service announcement. They might be open still in that county in Georgia that had problems with their polling machines. We do prefer politeness, yes. Lindsey Graham and Jamie Harrison, it's close. Because it's South Carolina. Oh, good luck, Jamie Harrison. So it's 51.8% to 47% with 3% of precincts reporting so far. Well, that's only 3% of precincts. All right. Go Lindsey Graham. We really need South Carolina. Harris County presidential election results. Oh, that's in Texas. Biden 56% and Trump 43%. That's good. That's good in terms of Texas potentially flipping. Polls in South Carolina closed at 7 o'clock. AP has called South Carolina for Donald Trump. All right. Someone suggested that's almost as telling as when it took hours for Virginia to go to Clinton. Okay. Oh, Lindsey Graham. We hope Jamie Harrison wins. All right, let's have a look at some Miami-Dade numbers for Florida. All right, medium good in North Carolina. So things are looking medium good in North Carolina. Well, there's still lots of voting to do. Oops. Okay, so Polling USA projections at 8 p.m. are that Biden wins Connecticut, Delaware, D.C., Massachusetts, Maryland, Rhode Island, Maine, and New Jersey, and that Trump wins Alabama, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Tennessee. And the too close to call is still Florida, Pennsylvania, Missouri. What's ME2? Is that the subset of Maine? And New Hampshire. Yay, and Laura Loomer, the right-wing QAnon conspiracy theory, super xenophobic anti-Muslim candidate, has been called for Laura Loomer's Democratic opponent, Frankel. She is a lady who chained herself to the door of Twitter headquarters in somewhere about a year ago. In Ohio, in the blue-collar counties of Lorain, Mahoning, Biden is running much better than Clinton. One divergence in pre-election polling, he was significantly stronger amongst non-college educated whites in North than in South. All right, let's have a look at Ohio. So the numbers apparently good compared to Clinton 2016. Yay, Biden's doing well in Ohio. Crowds are gathering near the White House on election night. Maybe Trump's feeling good that he put up those extra non-scalable fences that made the White House look like it was under siege in a civil war. So Miami-Dade in Florida is apparently unusual because of all of the Cuban and Venezuelan expats there who are very susceptible to arguments that Biden's a socialist. So if Biden was getting pummeled in bellwether suburbs, I'd be freaking out too, but he's not. He's running strong everywhere else. Folks, Biden is overperforming Hillary almost everywhere except for Miami-Dade, nationwide. And Florida is a reach state. So it's not a state that Biden needs to get to 270. It's a state that Trump needed to get to 270 votes. So even if Florida is for Trump, that is not a Trump wins the election scenario. Oh, Ohio is where Youngstown is. That's where there's a plant that Trump promised to keep open. Was it General Motors plant? So that's where Biden is currently leading Trump 61.9 to 37%. And that's a good sign that people that Trump has made promises to can retain a degree of pragmatism to say, no, you have not made good on those promises, Trump. Texas Harris County Clerk's office says 200,000 votes have been cast in person today. Biden in Indiana, even though Indiana's a Trump state, isn't it? Biden's getting over 51% of the vote in a particular county there, and Biden got 43%. So that's 8% more for Biden. Look, and he's leading in LaPorte County. Good work. Biden's plus 10 in Delaware, Ohio, with 86,000 votes in. That's a big deal. Where's Jacksonville? Is that part of Florida? Yeah, Indiana's a redneck state. So in redneck states, instead of redneck states consolidating Trump gains, Biden is overperforming relative to Clinton. Pennsylvania started counting mail-in ballots this morning. That's good. That would be why Eric Erickson was saying GOP confidence dissipating, because they're not just counting the in-person votes, they're counting the early votes, which do skew heavily Democratic because Democrats take COVID more seriously than Republicans. And I will say as well, Democrats take reality more seriously than Republicans at this present moment in time. Ohio is a state with a lot of unions. Could you explain this question more? I don't understand it. When you say, do you see electoral college votes moving, what do you mean? Moving from what? There's been a lot of different predictions about the total for election college outcomes. Okay, so let's see. Biden is running ahead of Clinton. These are Florida counties. 42,000 in Duval, 45,000 in Hillsborough, 31,000 in Pinellas, ahead of the Clinton turnout, but down 76,000 in Miami-Dade. But 42 plus 45 plus 31 is higher than 76. So even though all the Cubans and Venezuelans are like, oh, yep, we can't vote for a socialist, we've got to vote for Trump, because they have life experience with communism, and it makes them more susceptible to arguments that a Democratic candidate is socialist. sad for them, really, but they're victims of propaganda because Donald Trump resembles a communist leader more closely than Biden, far more closely, because he's a totalitarian, anti-democrat despot. So yes, McConnell is sad, but people expected that. If you followed serious pundits or predictors, they would say the polls have Amy McGrath down a lot, and it's a super red state. But Jamie Harrison was close to Lindsey Graham in polls, so I would still love to see Lindsey Graham lose his Senate seat. How exciting would that be? First wave of exit polls from Georgia, Biden at 50% and Trump at 47%. I mean, this reporting is probably irritating for people who've just spent months in abject terror because of COVID, and people suffering financial hardship because of COVID and Trump's worse than useless pandemic response. So it's probably hard to see this election reporting because it's like, well, how could there be even anyone voting for a president who's so terrible? But if you ease into accepting, yes, fascism overtook America, a bad person cheated with the help of a foreign adversarial government, illegitimately won office, and then used that office to escalate propaganda against his opponents, against the press, like standard fascist playbook tactics, then it's not a surprise that he would have some vote, even in circumstances where he has demonstrably orchestrated the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans. Fascism leads people into all manner of danger. Look how many Germans died because of Hitler's actions, to say nothing of how many people from other nations around the world died as a consequence of Hitler's actions. But it took a lot of extra deaths to defeat Hitler and to stop him. And Americans can potentially stop Donald Trump today with the power of their vote, which will be an amazing achievement, because propaganda can steamroll people into voting against their self-interests. Propaganda can organize for people to be enthusiastic about terrible things and terrible leadership. You gave money to Jamie Harrison? Nice. Yes, I've heard that the panhandle is mostly Republican, but that there's been very high turnout elsewhere in Florida, which gives the Democrats a fighting chance. I don't know what do you mean by movement in EC? Do you mean movement from the 2016 results? Yeah, it'll be a function of later on when they've done more counting. What are the ladybugs? Jamie Harrison. Joe Biden has rolled to an almost 180,000 vote margin in Franklin County early votes, winning by more than a 3-1 margin. So that's more Ohio votes pouring in. Nice. Florida looking better now. Very good. In Georgia, Cobb County, in 2016, it was 49 for Clinton relative to 47 for Trump, but now it's 63 for Biden. So that's an improvement. 14% improvement for Biden relative to Clinton's performance with voters there. So the account I'm following, Contented Independent, you should follow him, he's great. Jewish, furry, independent conservative, and forever never Trump. Supporting Joe Biden for president. Biden's at 51% in Florida so far, and Trump at 48%. Nice work. People say, everyone stop freaking out about Florida. All we've had is chunks of the early vote so far. And Florida is not critical to a Biden pathway. The early exit polls are showing the electorate is less white and is better educated than 2016. So maybe educated voters who were all cynical and didn't want to vote for either candidate, they are voting for a candidate this year. And do you know who that candidate is? The candidate who endorses science and who doesn't wage manslaughter by negligence, depraved negligence against the American people. Because education gives you some increased likelihood of having the ability to intellectually resist propaganda about a disease. Okay, so I don't want to know the story about the ladybugs. Okay. Oh, it's a derogatory term for Lindsey Graham. Okay. Oh. In Georgia, absentee by mail processing was delayed 4 hours because a water pipe burst in a room, but officials saying no ballots were damaged. I know everyone is getting 2016 flashbacks, but these numbers are horrible for Trump. Good. Thank you for saying that, Christopher Boozy. He invented Bot Sentinel, which is that program that helps you detect bots. And Virginia wasn't called for Hillary until very late in 2016. So Virginia being called for Biden now is also good. Oh, Rick Santorum is a commentator on CNN. Everybody hates Rick Santorum. He's awful. And he said the fact that more college-educated people are voting is not good for Donald Trump. What an awesome sentence. What an awesome sentence. I mean, I don't associate virtue with college education, but in a climate where there's a disease and it helps to understand science to get that a virus that doesn't have a high fatality rate can nevertheless kill more people by virtue of complacency, widespread transmission, and then a slow burning deadliness that affects more people. So that Ebola was contained more rapidly than COVID-19 because it did kill so many of the people that it infected. So fatality of a virus is not a predictor of how many people it will kill. So Ebola killed less people than COVID-19 is killing because people couldn't survive for long enough to pass it on to a lot of people. So Ebola was inherently more self-limiting than COVID-19. COVID-19 is something that tricks you, particularly if your leadership is inadequate. And Asian countries do very well because they had SARS too already, and they have a strong culture of consideration for others in relation to mask wearing, and that really helps. Americans can be very considerate, but they need leadership that tells them the truth about COVID. And Trump doesn't do that, so Trump supporters adhere to a fake version of reality. Biden voters are more likely to accept science, accept the need to modify behavior, to wear a mask, to socially distance. Trafalgar. I don't watch Trafalgar. All right. We need Georgia. How's Georgia going? Warnock, for the special Senate election, the Democratic candidate, Reverend Warnock, is leading from the look of it with 39.2% of the vote. And Kelly Loeffler, that insider trading Republican Senate lady currently in the position, she's at 24%. Republican candidate Doug Collins at 17%. And then somebody else called Jackson. Who's Jackson? Haven't heard of him. He's only got 6.2%. Wow, 27% of the vote in Biden is winning Cobb County in Georgia by over 20 points. And Hillary won the county by less than 3% in 2016. So that's a swing of 17% towards the Democratic candidate. Oops. That's what I meant to click on. Democrat Val Demings, yay. She's a former police officer, Black American lady. She at one point was being spoken of as a potential candidate for the vice presidential running mate for Joe Biden. Absolutely, Trump is very negative towards science. He's increased the amount of particulate matter in the air in America because of his EPA appointees and their relaxation of Obama-era regulations that had reduced the amount of fine particulate pollution in the air. So there's more asthma, there's more respiratory conditions, there's more long-term health problems because of Trump's eagerness to undo everything Obama did and Trump's capitulation and interest in indulging corporate polluters. Yes. Have I had breakfast? No. Hydrate? Yes. Very important. I think I will take a break, you guys. Thank you, Molly. That is my Patreon account. Thank you to all my Patreons, Molly, Alan, Sheldon, Eleanor, Craig, lots of people. Mark, Elizabeth, Phil. Oh, look. That's lovely. I've got 15 patrons. How sweet. I love you guys. Scrambled eggs and toast sounds good. That's a thought. All right. I'll see you soon, guys. I'll see you soon. I'll have a nap, maybe for breakfast. You may request Broadway tickets in the future. You brothers are so kind and lovely. I adore that you think I have a chance on Broadway. Thank you, Molly. You're so appreciated. Cup of tea and water. That sounds even better. Thanks, boys. Mwah. All the best to you. Thank you so much for your wholehearted, generous support, your kindness, and your consistency of encouragement and support. I look forward to being with you some more on this momentous, epic, historic day today. And I hope we all go forward together with increased commitment to working for climate justice, racial justice, economic justice, and together with all the attributes of what ideally Republicans were supposed to represent, which was pragmatism and moderating our compassionate impulses with an urge to take care of ourselves. So Republicanism has veered into selfish indulgence of gun rights and corporate deregulation motives, and a lot of the conservative desires to resegregate America, to promote that innocuous sounding thing of school choice, but that allows you to have vouchers from the government, which you choose your school with, and lets you indulge your racism if that's what you feel like. And clearly a lot of people do feel that way. And so would facilitate the formation of all white academies once again. I mean, there are still academies that are all white, but it would really ramp up the number of all white academies, because it would allow parents to funnel government funding towards all white academies of their choice. So we need big government to help mitigate against the worst impulses of human nature, and to support opportunities and our better impulses, and to acknowledge that it's okay for liberty to have some measure of restrictions in order for there to be increased safety. So we accept having to get a driver's license. We accept road rules. We accept restrictions on our freedom without saying our freedom is compromised. You'll never take our freedoms. And America has learnt more about the need to get up and stand up against the NRA and their country-damaging rhetoric of how freedom must be preserved, to own weapons under any circumstances. They want felons to own weapons. They don't want felons to vote. They want felons to own weapons. For domestic abusers to still have untrammeled access to buying as many weapons as they like, which results in a higher homicide rate for Americans, 5 times higher than other commensurate nations around the world. So today, every vote for a Democratic candidate is a vote for gun sanity, and a vote for pandemic sanity, and a vote for economic sanity. A kitten in Biden will win, yes, and a kitten in every house. I know you love kittens. And a couple of mice too. All right, guys and girls, see you in a few hours potentially. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.